Hey there, everybody. I hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining me for this week's Teams tip. I've got a really exciting one, and that is one of the first announcements to actually come out from this past Microsoft Ignite meeting polls, proper support for polls inside of Microsoft Teams meetings. You could do this kind of in a roundabout way before using the chat functionality, but it didn't really work very reliably. There was some troubles, and it was kind of like wedging, a solution into place. Well, now, thanks to the new meeting extensibility options, you have the ability to add polls through Microsoft Forms as a proper app for your entire meeting. I want to go through how to do this as an organizer. How do you add your polls? How do you set it up? What the experience is for attendees actually in a meeting. How do you manage these polls, launch them, close them? Then I want to get into a couple of details that I've played with over the past few days, like how to prevent people from doing squirrely things in your meeting with polls, what the external attendee experience looks like, and gather all of this up into a few key takeaways that will explain to you how this functionality works at its current state and a few things that I would like to see hopefully in some future iterations. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in and take a look at polls in Microsoft Meetings. The way that you set up a poll in Microsoft Teams meetings is you do it from the calendar, from the event itself. Unfortunately, right now, you can't add the poll while you're creating the meeting. What you do is you go and you edit a meeting that already exists. Now, it doesn't matter if you created it in Teams or if you created the meeting in Outlook and then just added a Teams meeting to it. What you want to do is you want to go to the Teams application and then go to your calendar. You'll find the meeting in question that you want to add polls to. This is called Test Polls in Meetings. Sounds like a good one that I want to add it to. And you want to open that up and hit Edit. Now, once I'm in editing this meeting, you'll see that there's a new plus button in the top where the tabs are. You've got your meeting notes, your whiteboard, and you've got this plus sign where you can add more functionality to your meeting. So we're going to go ahead and click that to add a new tab. And you'll see that a few applications might show up for you. We have this priority matrix, Asana, a couple other things we can talk about, maybe a slide deck that we're going to go over, or we're going to meet about a spreadsheet. I can add that as a tab to the meeting. For this meeting, I want to get some feedback from my audience, so I'm going to add the Microsoft Forms application. If I click on that, that's going to show me a tab that says, hey, you're going to add forms to this meeting. That's exactly what I want to do, so I click Add. And then this will come up and says, hey, you can create polls. Great. I hit save, and now I'll have a new tab up here at the top called polls. It's pretty basic. There's just one thing that you can do, and that is add a new poll. Now, for this one, I think I'm going to just kind of pre-stage a few polls before this meeting. This is fantastic because before, you weren't even able to create your polls beforehand. You would have to create them on the fly when the time was right. Now, as a good meeting organizer, you can do your prep work ahead of time by creating some polls. So maybe I'm going to be meeting with a wide variety of our associates, and I want to know, like, where are they from? So I can put, where are you from? That's my question, and I'm going to pose, a few options for them to answer. We're based out of Kansas City, so I'm going to start with Kansas City. Our next largest location is in Malvern. And then we have lots of folks in India as well. We'll say the UK. Going down the list here from like largest to smallest campuses, we got Germany. We've got some folks in Sweden. And, okay, so the first difficulty that we run into here is you can only have multiple choice answers. So you can pick one or you can add multiples. And you can only have up to 6 different answers. So I can't keep going and list like 30 different offices that we operate in. So you'll want to be aware of that. You can have 6 options for your poll. Now at the bottom here, I want to share the results automatically, and I want to keep the responses anonymous. So I can decide to do that or not. I kind of want to know like who's from where, so I'll go ahead and keep those responses not anonymous. Their name will be tied to what they voted for. And it'd be kind of fun to see where everybody's coming from, so we'll share those results automatically. So we hit save, then I'm going to add a second poll here. And we're going to hit create new in the upper corner. And for this one, we're going to get a real hard-hitting question. What's your favorite ice cream flavor? And we're going to go with chocolate, vanilla, or strawberry. Now, whenever I took a screenshot of this and posted it on Twitter, Matt Wade, fellow MVP of mine, he posted, a cheeky response saying, I wonder how many people would pick Neapolitan. Well, I'm not going to add Neapolitan as an option. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow multiple answers so people can pick all three of them if they want to say, I like all three of them together. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to keep these automatically showing the results so people can, fight over what their favorite is. And I want to keep this one anonymous. This might be some pretty personal information. So we're going to hit save. And then finally, I'm going to add another poll here. And on this one, we're going to do what game console do you like? So game console choice. I'm about a week late, but we'll say PS5, Xbox Series X/S, or my favorite, the new Game & Watch from Nintendo. So again, on this one, I'm just going to leave it with one answer. So we're going to leave that toggled off. And I don't want to share the results because I really don't want to start a war here. And then I'll go ahead and keep it, not anonymous. So we're going to hit save. And I've got three options here. They're ready to go. You'll see that they are in a draft state. So nobody can see these polls. Nobody knows that they exist until I decide to launch them as the meeting owner. Now I can launch them from here and make them active. Maybe I want to have this answer or this poll already there as people arrive, and people might arrive before I do. I could go ahead and I could pre-launch that. Then whenever people get into the meeting, they'll see that available to them in the meeting chat or in the new forms icon that I'll show you. The thing to be aware of this is that it will launch in the meeting chat. So if they're not in the meeting, they'll still get a chat message in Microsoft Teams letting them know. So this can be good if you want like somebody's opinion like the day before or an hour before, kind of as like a gentle way to remind them of this meeting coming up. But you should be aware that it will notify them when you launch that. If you're not inside the meeting, it'll still chat with them. All right, so with Movie Magic, we're going to speed up and go ahead and join this meeting, see what the experience is like during the meeting. Okay, so here we are in the meeting. I've joined it from 4 different people. We've got Megan, who's the organizer in Contoso. We've got a dude that's anonymous. This is me in an Edge private browser, so I've just entered my name. I'm not logged into anything. I've got my regular admin account, so there's that. That's on my Dell laptop, so I'm on a PC. And then finally, I've got my normal account, which is this one. That's me running Teams on my Mac. So I've got a wide variety of options here. And you'll notice the people who are running the new experience, if they are in the organization, they will see this Forms button right here. So right where my cursor is, I have this icon called Forms. That's the poll icon. If I open that up, you'll see there's all of the polls that I created. There's the 3 that I've got those same buttons that I had before, all of that. Now, to answer the first question that might come up, what about external attendees? Can they create new polls or do things with the polls? You cannot do that if you're external. So this is an external person who is authenticated. And you'll see that in this new meeting experience, I do not have the Forms button. Something that you should be aware of is if you're the organizer in your company and you have other people in your company who join, the attendee and presenter rights are going to be very important here. So if you're concerned about somebody from your company creating random polls, being able to do that, what you'll want to do is you'll want to click on the people that you don't want to be able to create polls, and you'll want to make them an attendee. If you knock them down from a presenter to an attendee, they won't be able to go into the polls option and click the create button. They'll just have a blank polls window. So that's 2 reasons why you want to really use the presenter versus attendee role because one, they can create new polls. Two, they will see these draft polls. So that may be good if you want to like delegate out. You're like, maybe you organize the meeting, you set up the polls, but there's a salesperson who's doing the actual presenting and they want to launch the polls. You want to leave them as a presenter because they'll have access to all of the polls even though they're not launched yet, and then they can launch them as they're comfortable. But if you have attendees that are in the same company, they'll be able to see your polls early if they are a presenter. So it's important to keep those two separate. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to launch this first poll and we'll see what the experience looks like. So from the polls area, I've got this first one. It's in a draft state. Where are you from? It's not anonymous, and we're going to share the results. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that. If I click next to it, you see that because I haven't launched it yet, I do have the ability to edit that poll. So I can bring this up here real quick, and maybe I do want to make that anonymous. I could check that box and hit save. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and hit launch here. Now this poll is now live. You see the red bar around it, and it pops up in a way that the other people can vote here. So over here on my Mac, even though I'm an external participant, it popped up right in the middle of the screen for me. It says, hey, Megan has created a poll. She wants you to vote on it. I'm from Kansas City, so I'm going to go ahead and hit submit right there. And there's my vote. I voted there. 100% of the votes are from Kansas City. Even Megan, the organizer, it pops up for her as well. She could say that she's from Malvern. So we'll click on Malvern for her and we'll hit submit. And then she also sees the results right here, but if she closes that, goes on in the meeting, she can always get back to the results here by clicking view options. You can toggle and change your vote, or you can see what the live tally is right here. Over here on the desktop, the other place where this would show up is under the chat section. So I don't have the forms button. Maybe I missed the pop-up that pops up here in the middle. I can always go to the conversation because the forms application actually posted that in the chat. So from here, I can say that I'm also from Kansas City, submit my vote, and now I've got 2 people in Kansas City, 1 person in Malvern. That should update here in a second. There we go, 66%, 33%. Now, what about dude that's anonymous? So this is my private browser session. I'm an anonymous person. I'm not authenticated. If I open up the chat and I want to participate in this, unfortunately, if I go ahead and hit submit, unfortunately that errors out pretty quickly. What we found in the testing is that if you're not logged in at all, even if the form is set to anonymous, anonymous people cannot vote on it. So they have to be authenticated at some level, whether it's in your organization or in another organization, like a client-facing organization. If they are authenticated, it'll work for them. If they're not authenticated, they joined as like a truly anonymous person, they won't be able to vote. So you want to keep that in mind. That's one of our takeaways here. And let's go ahead and close this poll. So everybody that can vote did vote. So me as the organizer, I'm going to go back to Megan here. As the organizer, I can now go in here and I've got my control panel here under the Forms app. I can click the little drop down and I can hit close poll. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to close that out. It's going to change here from the live red icon to a gray closed icon. And then everybody else, if we go over here, everybody else, I had lost that submit button. So I can click the different radio buttons, but I cannot resubmit my thing because it says right here, this poll is closed. So I've closed out that poll. Maybe I want to export the results, see who voted for what. I can just go ahead and click export. So this button changes to the next logical step. You launch the poll, you view the results, you close the poll, you export the results and analyze them. So I've now exported these results. Let me see where they landed. I think they land in the downloads folder. So there it is. Where are you from? And that's, number 1 of 3. And this is going to open up, of course, in Excel. It's just an Excel spreadsheet that shows what everybody voted for. And we'll see what this looks like in a second. Okay, and there we go. So I've got vote number 1, 2, and 3, when it actually happened, like when they clicked the button. and then who it was and what they selected. So of course, then I could feed this into Power BI if I had some giant meeting going on. I could create, a pie graph off of this or something like that and kind of visualize that in another way. Now, one thing I'm curious about, I haven't looked at this yet, but because this is Microsoft Forms, this should be under Megan's account. So we're just going to test this out live and see if I can visualize these results under Megan's Microsoft Forms account. So we are going to open up Edge here. Okay, so I'm curious if Megan is going to have the poll results in her actual Microsoft Forms location. So we're going to go ahead and go to Office right here, and from the little selector, we're going to go to All Apps and find Forms. And then I want to see if this form is actually under her account. So we'll go to All My Forms, and there's that Where Are You From? So this is captured in her account. Now, what's nice about this is rather than exporting to Excel, I can view and page through these responses, and it gives me some nice graphs already. So it's a little bit like faster step if you don't want to share the results. You want to like look at them first, but you want to show on a bar graph or on a pie graph. You can actually look at these, and they're captured even after the meeting is over. So you don't have to like go hunt for them. You can just get them out of Microsoft Forms if you want to. So that's good to know, a little takeaway again. Now, let's go ahead and launch the next poll. So this is what's your favorite ice cream. We're going to go ahead and launch that one next. And again, over on the Mac side, on the native app side, we see what's your favorite ice cream. This time I can actually select multiple options. So because of that, I have checkboxes instead of radio buttons. So I can click vanilla and chocolate, I can click just chocolate, or I can do what Matt Wade did, do all three of those and hit submit. So there's all those. It's equally split across all three of those options. Let's say that Megan only likes chocolate. Let's say that over on my PC that I only like chocolate. And let's just do chocolate, just like that. And then over on the anonymous person in the browser, not authenticated, he likes chocolate too, but when he submits his vote, he gets an error message. So keep in mind again, anonymous people cannot vote in these polls. And then we're going to go ahead and do the same thing. We can close this poll out, and then nobody can vote for it. But what if a bunch of people, come in late to the meeting and you do want to ask them their opinion? You can actually reopen the poll. You've closed the poll down, nobody can vote right now. But if you want to get more feedback, you can go here and hit reopen. Now, if I reopen, it goes from closed back to live here in a second, just like that. And it has reposted that in the meeting. So even though new people have joined this particular meeting, I can see that I can have another opportunity to vote. So maybe I want to change my vote now just to chocolate. The results come up here now instead of being spread across all three, because the guy who picked the three options went up to just chocolate. The consensus is 100% of people like chocolate. So if you've already voted in the poll and you re-vote in the poll, it will just change your vote because you're authenticated. It knows who you are. So it already knows what your vote was. It's just going to move that to another option. So you can't vote multiple times is what I'm getting at there. So we're going to go ahead and reclose that poll. Now, the only other thing I want to show from the experience is this truly anonymous? So we're going to click Export Results right here from this one that was anonymous, the ice cream one. And we exported those results. We're going to go ahead and open up that spreadsheet from my Downloads folder. And then the same thing from Microsoft Forms. If we go back and go back to the home page for Forms, Megan will see that she has all three of these things as responses. The ice cream one was anonymous. So we're going to open that up in Microsoft Forms. We're going to look at the responses. and view the results, and you'll actually see those are anonymous. So the name is not captured at all whenever you mark it as anonymous. Same thing over here on the spreadsheet. Those are all 3 anonymous. They all 3 voted chocolate. So that just goes to show that whenever you mark anonymous, it truly is anonymous, even for the organizer. Okay, so that wraps up everything that I have noticed with the new Microsoft Forms capabilities in Microsoft Teams. A few of the key takeaways: when you go to create your meeting, you add the polls app to the meeting in your Teams calendar. So you don't get to do it when you're scheduling the meeting, and you don't. There's no button to do it from the meeting window itself. If you're already in the meeting and you go to the chat and try to add a form there, it will not add the full polls tab for you. You got to do that from the calendar invite. That's one takeaway. The next one is, if you have other people in your organization and you want to prevent them from creating polls and seeing the results and seeing the polls early, then knock everybody down to an attendee. Only have presenters be people that you trust, that you want to be able to launch polls, create polls, and view the upcoming polls. Third, one Easter egg that I've found with this is, even whenever you do knock down the attendees and participants, attendees and presenters, if somebody is in your tenant, they can still go to the chat, and from the dots, they still have the ability to add the forms tab, and they can basically kind of push a poll into the chat, and that will show up in the polls tab right here. So even if they're an attendee, if they're in your same organization, they can shove a poll out to everybody anyway. So it makes it less obvious, but that is something to keep in mind. Hopefully that's something that'll be cleared up maybe in an update in the future here. External attendees cannot add polls because they don't have access to your Forms environment. That's also why they don't see the Forms tab up there at the top. If you mark something anonymous, it truly is anonymous. It doesn't capture their name. And finally, the participants have to be authenticated in order to vote. So if you have a scenario where somebody doesn't have Microsoft Teams, so they join from a browser and they type their name in, they will not be able to vote in those polls. You should be aware of that. It's getting less and less these days as more companies adopt Microsoft Teams, but you should be aware of that fact. So with all those takeaways, there's a few things that I would like to see personally, 3 things that kind of stand out in my mind. Obviously, the biggest one is I would like to have everybody be able to vote in the meeting. If you have somebody that's not using Teams, they're definitely going to complain if they don't have the ability to vote in the poll. They're probably going to chat and complain about it. So I would like to see Microsoft just do actual anonymous voting. I would love to see more options. Like we're kind of limited because we can only do choose one or choose multiples. And we can only have 6 options in the drop down in the radio buttons. So I'd like to see more around that. One thing that I think would be really cool, especially for people I talk to in like the education space, or if they want to do like creative brainstorming type thinking, is to be able to have text-based answers. I think that would be really cool if you could pose a question that's more open-ended, so that people could type a word or they could type a short phrase in, and then maybe build a word cloud off of that. I think that would be a really cool addition to the Microsoft Forms capabilities. And then finally, I think it would be really great if we could have time-based polls. So whenever I go in and edit one of these polls, or I create a new poll, my hope for the future would be that whenever you create a poll, if you could mark it anonymous, you could share the results, but if you could like check a box to have it be timed, that would be really cool, because then somebody who's like juggling multiple things because they're the presenter and the organizer, if they could just set up their polls to be like 5 minutes or 3 minutes each, then they could have them auto close. I think that would be a really helpful thing for people. So hopefully if Microsoft ever sees this video, hopefully those types of things are on the backlog, or maybe they're thinking about it. If you find other things within Microsoft Forms that are cool little Easter eggs, or if you have opinions on what you would like to see in the future, go ahead and drop that in a comment below, and that'll be great feedback for me to gather and provide to Microsoft that I do on a regular basis. So With all of that said, thank you for watching. I hope that polls add a lot of functionality to your Microsoft Teams meetings and make things a little bit more engaging and interactive when we're all stuck in meetings all day. Thanks again for watching. Hope you have a great week. I'll talk to you next time.